Constitutional design. The third unit in this civics part, we are going to deal about how is the constitution designed. So my dear students, in this unit we shall discuss how are the steps taken for the establishment of the Constituent Assembly, what are the guiding principles that were taken into consideration before and after drafting of the constitutions. So let us find out first. Let's have a case study on South Africa. We all know South Africa is the name of a country which is also known as Republic of South Africa. Republic of South Africa is located in the southern part of the African continent as it is located. So why should we study about South Africa when we talk about the constitutional design? When we talk about the constitutional design here, we are stressing on the case study of South Africa because South Africa is a country which is very closely associated with India also on the historical lines even. Gandhiji first advocated the principle of non-violence and satyagraha in South Africa. Later, when he came to India, he followed the same principles where he became the father of the nation and brought for all of us freedom for our country. Now moving on to the concept of our lesson. In the case study of South Africa, South Africa is the only country in the history where it has been also the domain of Britishers. The Britishers has taken out the political control and later they started to make the local Africans, especially the South Africans, apart from the government and started to rule them. You may get a fundamental question. What is the difference between Britishers taking the government and making the Africans apart when it comes to the other hand in India? In India also we have Britishers taking over the control and making Indians apart from the system. There is a fundamental difference here. The Africa situation is the Britishers who initially went to Africa settled in Africa, so a minority of population emerged out of the settlers of Africa. The Britishers who settled in Africa. So now in the South African population we have 10 to 20% of the people settled Britishers and 80% the basic local Africans. When it comes to India, they dominated Indian scene for 200 years, but they never contested in the elections and they never took over the political power into their hands and dictated the laws for us. They ruled as a crown colony, India, but not directly elected country. So in South Africa the case is different. The settled Africans got themselves elected for the prime ministerial post, president posts, and they started to rule the country as if they are the basic African people, and they started to formulate the laws, policies for the entire African community in South Africa. Though they are in minority, they started to control the majority. So that is a fundamental difference which makes us to have a close view on South Africa. So now moving on to understand the concept of the lesson. I think you all have heard the name Nelson Mandela, a great personality who lived in this world. When I read a quote about Gandhiji, people are writing an interesting point about Gandhiji. Gandhiji followed the ideas in the present 20th and the 21st century where we feel they are very far from reality. He followed the principle of non-violence. The writer went on to an extent saying that the next generation children, means you people, would also get a doubt that this man lived with this ideology, with the flesh and blood. Is it reality or not? Because the ideas what he followed in practice were really very difficult to practice. The same ideas were continued and followed by Nelson Mandela in South Africa. The result of this, he has to spend 28 years in a prison in the Robben Islands, which is a very deadly place in South Africa. Let's go and check out the details now. See here, Nelson Mandela fought against the existing government of South Africa in 1964. Why did Nelson Mandela raise his voice against the government? The government started to follow the policy of apartheid. What is apartheid? Apartheid is a name of a policy, or it is a discrimination done on the basis of the color of your skin. They termed them as blacks. The Africans are basically colored people because of the climatic conditions, and the location of Africa falls very close to the equatorial zone. So naturally, people are colored because they receive sun's rays directly on the equatorial region as well as in the torrid region. So the nature made them to be colored people. So there is no fault from the people's side. So who are you to discriminate the people on the basis of the color of the skin? So discriminating the people on the basis of the color of the skin and keeping them apart from the administration, from the government, from the normal social life is known as apartheid. This policy is followed for many years, or it would right to say many decades, in South Africa. So in 1964, Nelson Mandela started a struggle to end up the policy of apartheid. This policy of apartheid has to be ended up because this is truly against the basic rights of the human beings. Someone cannot judge the others just on the color of the skin, which any person doesn't have any control on that, which he acquires it naturally. So he is insulting the birth of any individual when we are discriminated basing on our color skin, or basing on our country, basing on any of the natural origins what you acquire by nature, which you do not have any control on that. So our Nelson Mandela took out the bold step to stand against the government. Along with him, we have 7 other members raising their voices. So Nelson Mandela, as usual, the other ruling governments put him under the imprisonment on the charges of treason against the government. What is treason? Treason means betraying the government, betraying the rule of a ruler or the monarch. In the ancient times, we used to have corrupt officials who used to do treason. But now, when it comes to the case of Nelson Mandela, Nelson Mandela rose his voice only to talk about the concept of equality. He wants to end the discrimination policy of apartheid, which is being followed from many decades and is being continued in Africa. He wants to end this up. So, the ruling government, the white minority government, which is ruling Africa, got very much angry, imprisoned him and his followers for lifetime imprisonment and on the charges of treason against the government, betrayal against the government. So the betrayal is literally an irrelevant word to Nelson Mandela's act, whatever it is, but there is no one to listen to the words of the government's policies or the Nelson Mandela's actions. Nelson Mandela stood firmly, even he was imprisoned for 27 years to 28 years continuously in the same prison, which is in a very horrible and shabby condition. He lived up to the expectations of the people. He stood firmly and he lived and he believed on the policy of non-violence. He never ever gave a slogan against the white minority government or asked the people to revolt or take to violent steps against the existing government. Finally, in 1991, the South African government, which imprisoned Nelson Mandela for 28 years, could not hold him longer with the international pressure, was forced to give up the policy of apartheid. Here comes the greatness of Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela gave a speech appealing to all his fellow Africans that do not criticize or do not separate the whites now. We, blacks, and the whites together will frame a constitution in which we all will have equal partnership in framing the constitution, and we all will live with equal respect and mutual respect. We do not want to hate each other at any point of time. Yes, we faced problems because of ideology, not because of people. So there is a real greatness of Nelson Mandela, who lost his entire life in the prison because of the white minority government, but he never rose his voice raising any negativity against the white minority government. He criticized the policy of apartheid, but not the people who propagated the policy of apartheid. He wanted the apartheid policy to be banned, removed, eliminated, but not the people. South Africa, struggle against apartheid. Now we shall move on to the details. What is actually the apartheid? Apartheid is a unique racial discrimination which is followed by the same Britishers how they followed in India. The unique racial discrimination, when I meant it that unique, it is only oneness. Unique stands for oneness. So very rarely we find this kind of discrimination, or we never ever find this kind of discrimination in any other corner of the world. That's why it is rightly known as unique racial discrimination. The unique racial discrimination is followed in Russia it's followed in South Africa. It is not against somebody else. It is followed against the owners of the land, the sons of the soil. How is it possible? Yes, it is possible in this world. During the phase of extreme colonialism, the Britishers came and stepped in Africa, where initially they started to settle down, and later they started to use their arms, weapons. With the arms and force, these people has taken over the control of South Africa. After taking over the control of South Africa, they started to form a government. They started to conduct elections only for the settlers of the Britishers, who are rightly termed as white minority people, discriminating them against the blacks. Here, these blacks are not somebody else or slaves. When we talk here the blacks are the real people who are born and brought up in South Africa. As I told you before, because of the natural settings of South Africa, we have people's colored skin, dark. These people are termed as blacks, and these people are discriminated severely. They are not allowed to enter into schools, colleges, hospitals, hotels, restaurants, or even in the beaches. There is a difference even in the public toilets. There are separate toilets for the whites and for the blacks. This discrimination was in a very extreme phase. It is actually, in real terms, segregation. They separated the people on the terms of the color of the skin, the blacks and the whites. So, this segregation reached to its extreme phase. Many organizations have been formed. Actually, the underlying point is that the Africans are not allowed to form any associations and should not protest any of the actions which the white minority government does. The white minority government uses its harsh hand always. If anyone violates the line of restriction, there are placard boards displayed everywhere discriminating that unless and until you don't have permit, you should not enter into this land, because this land or this part of the beach is extensively dedicated only for the whites to have their bath. This is how the segregation went on to the extreme. They came to Africa, they settled in Africa, they are not allowing the Africans to be free in their own country. So this made the Africans to feel very bad. Actually, it is against humanity. Many countries started to raise their voices in UN. What is happening in South Africa? Why this apartheid is not being ended up in Africa? But still, the white minority government continued for many years. Nelson Mandela was imprisoned. Many other leaders who raised their voices against this one were completely imprisoned or sometimes been deported from the country. Many people were tortured, many people were killed. Government took all the repressive methods to suppress the voices of the Africans. Whatever happened, finally people, though they are getting painful response from the white minority government, started to make their voices louder with an umbrella organization of the African Front or African Party leadership. Finally, the efforts of the people started to grow day by day. Till the time they were passive, now they turned active. What happened then? As the time passed on, the African National Congress came into existence. It is the umbrella organization and later supported by all the organizations which opposed the ideology of apartheid. They want to end the apartheid philosophy or the apartheid which is being followed truly on the basis of discrimination against their own people. So no longer the Britishers could control the people of Africans with the policy of repression, with pressure, with fear. They are not able to control the people. Finally, there is no other way left out for them. They agreed and repealed the laws. With the repealing of the laws, Nelson Mandela, who was imprisoned for 28 years, 28 long years, walked out as a free man, because now there is no apartheid. So there is no treason done by Nelson Mandela. The government itself changed the laws. Later, Nelson Mandela took the great initiative and ran for the elections. But before, on 26th of April 1994, we have the new flag unfurled. The new flag unfurled, marking as the birth of Republic of South Africa, a new democratic nation. The new democratic nation came into existence. Historical speech given by Nelson Mandela. Let us have few lines which were told by Nelson Mandela. It is a great time where the great transition happened from the colonial rule of apartheid to a great democratic country to come into existence. And he also appreciated the apparent and inherent goodness of the Africans and also to accept the inherent goodness of the English men. Yes, the blacks faced many troubles and problems and repressive rule in all forms. They are discriminated on their own lands. They are not allowed freely. They are treated as slaves. They are treated as second-rated citizens. But still, the inherent goodness of the Africans Nelson Mandela want to be continued. As Nelson Mandela gave the historical speech and also appealed to all the fellow Africans that do not criticize, do not have any hatred against the against the whites who ruled the blacks. Yes, he made an appeal which was a historical appeal. Generally, if we get an inch of pain, we start to take aggressive actions against that particular person. We try all sort of methods to make him to feel what a pain is. But here, who spent 28 long years in an imprisonment, a very critical life, a very horrible condition, but still never appealed to his people. Finish these whites within a minute. Maybe all the whites in Africa would be washed away if he made an appeal. He never did that. That's the reason why he is considered as a great personality or the prominent personality of the 21st century. Yes, he appealed to the people to forgive the whites for whatever actions they have done, maybe intentionally or unintentionally. And we all will join our hands together and draw up a new constitution where it would be rightly to say the rainbow country, wherein we have the different colored people staying here with mutual respect and mutual concern. We will not have the old hatred in our hearts. We will remove the clutter. We will have fresh minds, young hearts, and we will look up to live together with the same whites who tortured us for more than 5 decades. But still, we all will forgive each other and live together and draw up a new line by writing a new constitution. So what is there in the new constitution of South Africa? We'll find out. Finally, after 2 years of continuous deliberations, the world has seen the finest constitutions ever written in the world. There were extensive rights enriched for the citizens in Africa. The blacks and whites together worked extensively very well in cooperation, and they have framed the finest constitutions in the world, which has been inspiring constitution for many of the democratic countries till date, and maybe it continues for the next generation also. Because even today we have many countries who are not democratic. And leaving aside this point, now moving on to understand what are the extensive rights. The extensive rights claims that no one should be left out from the part of the solution, and no one should be treated as a demon. Whatever may be the bitter experiences in the past, making a historical speech, Nelson Mandela giving the constitution to the nation, quotes that we, the people of Africa, give to ourselves the constitution wherein we are actually remembering our past and the future. It is a combination of the past and the future. In the past, whatever that has happened to us, brutal, repressive, horrible, worried past, should not be repeated at any cost. And at the same time, in the fullest sense, this country belongs to all of us, all in the sense men, women, blacks, whites, all together, and also encourages to continue their acceptance of goodness towards to the next generations. So this fullest constitution could see its dawn after continuous efforts made, and finally today the most finest inspiring constitutions of the world is the South African Constitution. So this is a constitution which has been also called as Rainbow Countries Constitution. Now, a fundamental doubt. Why do we need a constitution? After the white minority and the blacks majority both want to have their own ideologies to be prevailed. The blacks want equal respect and they want to preserve their dignity. The whites want to preserve their privileges and properties. So the fundamental question comes, whose idea has to be accepted? After a thorough discussion and negotiations, finally the white agreed to the principle of the majority, and the one person, one value, one respect has come into existence. So now, after continuous negotiations, it was not so easy process as we discussed just now. They discussed, they came to the consensus, they agreed the concept. It was not so easy. It took many days and many months for them to understand the basic differences of the ideologies and then come to the conclusions. And later, the whites, who were till yesterday dictating the rules, ready to accept the rules prepared by the blacks, the majority. So the blacks did not go on the authoritarian lines. They want whites also to join with them equally. So they brought the ideology of one person, one value, one vote. So with this one person, one value, one vote, we got a new setup coming in. Afterwards, now the fundamental doubt comes here. What about if tomorrow the blacks, as they are in majority, if they attack the minority group, what should we do? Whom should we ask? Who will be there to help? Yes, it is a serious problem. We all need to understand the condition there. So they decided, we will have the rules of the game written first, and everybody should follow the rules of the game. What I mean by the rules of the game is that rules are supreme. Rules are above than people. We will write rules which are not hurting and harming anybody else. So the blacks, yes, they are majority but cannot attack the minority people. The whites also should not discriminate the blacks on any discrimination or any form or in any expression or in any faith. So let us fix the rules of the game and make sure that no one is above the rules, no one is given a special treatment, no one is exempted from the rules. So rules are important, rules are above the people. So that set of rules of the game are to be written and everybody should abide it and follow it. So this basic set of rules is nothing but a constitution. Why do we need a constitution? In order to safeguard ourselves, in order to have a middle person in the middle, a middle person to guide us. Suppose tomorrow the blacks do not like the attitude of the whites, or someone who has been suffered a lot because of the whites want to take revenge on the whites who are weak now, cannot do that. Who will stop him? The rules will stop him. The people, after making the rules, they should abide by the rules. So this abiding of the rules also should be advocated and propagated. So we need a constitution which is nothing but the book of rules and regulations of that particular country, and that everybody has to follow. No one is above the constitution means no one is above the rules and regulations. This is the most important aspect. That why do we need a constitution? We need a constitution. We need certain rules to be at place. That too, having a better experiences, ruthlessly ruled by the whites. Definitely the blacks, one or the other, would have that intention to take a revenge. So the whites want to preserve themselves and safeguard their lives. Blacks want to maintain their status. This time they don't want to become slaves again. So both the parties have to be neutral in certain aspects. So in order to maintain that neutrality, we need a constitution. And this also should maybe sure that all people follow the rules of the constitution and abide by the rules of the constitution. So that is why we need a constitution, the book of rules at place, and mandatory for all the people to follow the rules which are in the book of Constitution. Now, why do we need a constitution? We have discussed that in order to have the people to have their own safety, we shall set the rules of the game before itself, and also make sure that we do not abide or disobey the rules. That's what we have seen the introduction of why do we need a constitution. Now moving on to understand the other angles of what are the advantages of a constitution, or why do we need a constitution in other aspects. First of all, when we talk about the opinions of the people, we generally have different people having different opinions. But once the rules are set, whether you agree to it or don't agree to it, you have to follow them. You may have a different opinion when compared to the rule which is in place, but we need to stick and follow to the rules which are already in the rule book. When you are not following it, you are liable for punishment. So that differences of opinions existed between the blacks and the whites. So maybe because of this mistrust which was present initially, and the fear of life also made them to write the book of rules, or the rules book, Constitution. The other aspects what we cover in the Constitution are the trust and coordination. The constitutional book builds the trust among the people of different communions, different regional background people. All together it brings them into a uniformity that we all are guided by the same rules and regulations, which also builds coordination between the people, because if anyone violates the rules is liable for punishment. This trust and confidence can be built up only by setting up the power of the rules, and these rules are prescribed in the book of rules, Constitution. Moving on to the next one, it also specifies how a government should function. What are the duties of a government? What should the government do? What should not be done by the government? For example, let us take the case of Africa. If the black government dictates certain laws which are curtailing the freedom of the whites, as the whites did when they were in power, so obviously a constitution does not have its true sense. So to block the duties, certain rights are given to the citizens, where any government, any law cannot prohibit the citizens from exercising their rights. So this all will be in place only when the constitution is truly practiced, and this truly practiced nature comes first when we dictate the rules and regulations of the game prior to that, and we stick ourselves, abide and follow to the rules and regulations. So how a government should function, how the election process should happen, who should conduct the elections, how the transition of the government should happen, how a law should be framed, where it has to be discussed, in which house it has to be initiated, what are the needs, and how the debate should go on, how the conclusion comes. Everything in detail will be discussed or prescribed in the book of the Constitution that is already present in the Constitution. For example, in the Indian Constitution also. So, all the rules, all the regulations, all the powers of the government, all the powers of the respective governments, like when I say respective governments, it can be state governments or it can be union governments. In order to avoid the confusion or power game between the state governments and the union governments, we again need clarity on that. These all will be prescribed in the constitutional book or the law books. And later, the rights of the individuals, the rights of the people, the restrictions on the government, all these are again found in the constitutional book. And also, we in the Constitution try to get aspirations. These aspirations are to fulfill the dream of many countries or many democratic countries, the dream of good society, for what we all are dreaming of. So a constitution is a book which contains all the rules and regulations to be followed in that particular land or a country when it is following democracy. And next, we in the constitution may have differences of opinions, but stick to the rules, and it's mandatory to follow the rules. It builds trust and coordination among the people. It specifies the duties of the government, the powers of the government, the rights of the individuals, and the don'ts of the governments also clearly. And it also aspires the society to build a good society for the people of the next generations. And now, after America had a war with the Britain people, they passed a constitution for themselves. Later, French Revolution, after the French Revolution happened, the French Parliament approved the constituent democratic constitution. So wherever there is democracy, there we have a constitution. It has become a principle that whenever we establish a democratic government, they would have constitution in place. But it's not necessarily that wherever there is a constitution, that is democratic. Wherever there is democracy, they have made it a practice that they would have constitution in place. But wherever there is a constitution, it's not necessary that there would be a democratic government there. The constitutional design, in that we are now going to discuss about the making of the Indian Constitution. We all know that India has suffered the British colonial rule for nearly 200 years. Indians started to fight back for their freedom from 1857, the first war of independence, to 1947. Finally, Indians are able to attain their freedom. At the end, there was a twist. India has been created, or Indians attained freedom from the British control. Before leaving India, the Britishers ruled India for 200 years, and before leaving India, on the basis of religion, the country, the British India, was divided into two different nations, India and Pakistan, on the lines of religion. So on the basis of the religious differences, we have Hindus taking into turn of India and Muslims turning into Pakistan states. So now India has been divided or partitioned into two different countries, India and Pakistan. And in the partition related violence on the both sides at the border, we lost nearly 10 lakh people's valuable lives. Now it is a very difficult task to draft a constitution for India in which we have very diverse cultures, languages, religions, and which we already experienced a traumatic accident which happened for us with the partition of India, or a great tragedy which happened with the partition of India. Now, moving on to understand the sequential order, how was the Indian Constitution drafted? Let us see now. The Indian Constitution, or the making of the Indian Constitution, was not an easy task. It was a very difficult and a mammoth task to be performed. And that was the time when the Indians till yesterday were treated as just subjects who are there to follow the rules and regulations which are dictated by the Britishers. The Indians were treated as second-rated people. The Indians are also termed as Indian dogs. From that situation, we are now moving ahead to the status of a citizenship where you claim your rights. You can be proud to be a citizen of a nation and you have the equal rights with others. So, from the status of a subject, moving on to a status of a citizenship, and where you get the true spirit of nationalism imbibed in your citizenship. This turning phase happened in 1947 for the Indians. So now, after India attained its independence, the Indian people till yesterday who suffered the British colonial rule will no more get the orders from the British Queen, will now elect the people, and they have their own leaders to rule them, to guide them. They will have their own representatives to represent their problems in the assembly halls. So the changing face from the status of the subjects to the citizens was during that period. So now we have to remember a fundamental point here. Till yesterday they were suffering the colonial laws and rules, or the troubles which were brought by the foreign ruler to them. Now it is a situation, or is a time to make and draft your own rules and your own regulations. Let us now check how did the procedure went on ahead. After Indians turned from subjects to citizens, the partition which has left out into a great tragedy for us. Many of the Indians lost their properties in India and forced to move to Pakistan, those who are Muslims. In the similar way, the other side, in Pakistan also, many of the Indian Hindus lost their valuable assets, and they have to forego them, and they have to move towards India in order to save their lives. And many who could not leave or who could not pass on the other side lost their valuable lives. Many disturbances occurred, communal riots broke out, and this partition resulted in a very violent situation at that point of time. And 10 lakh people lost their valuable lives is really a very traumatic incident for all of us. Next, moving on to the other important challenging point, that is princely states. When India was under the British rule also, these princely states are not directly controlled by the Britishers. The Britishers have recognized the princely states as independent kingdoms during that time. They may be small in size, but they have their independent status at that time also. So, out of the partitioned India and Pakistan, we also have 565 independent princely states at that time. Now the choice is given to the independent kingdoms, kings and the queens, whether they would like to join the Indian Union or would they show their interest to join towards the Pakistan Union. What would be their choice? They are free to make their choice. This right is given to them by the Britishers, and they left. So now India is created, Pakistan is created. The independent princely states are given freedom to join any of the parties. So now it's a very, very difficult task to convince all the princely states and make them to join towards the Indian Union and draft a constitution which suits to all the people, whether they are part of British India or not a part of British India, but still they should have a common agreement or a common confidence on the laws which are going to be drafted now. So that is another difficult task. Moving on to the situation. So when we look at the situations on a broader lines, we have one side the religious disturbances happening. We lost many millions of people there, at least 1 million people. And then moving on to the other side, we have 500 plus princely states which are still not confirmed whether they join this side or the other side. So now for the framers of the Indian Constitution, for the people those are going to draft the Indian Constitution, the situation was very, very unsecure. Today we feel the Constitution provides security for us. Today we are confident that our Constitution is in place. But during those days, the situation was not so supporting and not so secure as it appears today. So from this different situation, the Constitution framers have worked hard, gone through all the relevant constitutions. The countries which are having diverse populations, the countries which have brought systems in place, they have checked everything thoroughly. They have drafted a rough constitution. After drafting a rough constitution, what did they do? We will find out. Moving on to the drafting of the constitution, we called it as the path to the constitution. The path is nothing but a road map, the preparation of a road map to draft a constitution. First of all, let us look at the broader outlook of India. India has not been a single nation ever since before the British arrival to India. So after Britishers have occupied all the regions and made British India, they have inculcated in Indians the feeling of oneness. Because of the common enemy what we have as a colonial ruler that regenerated among the Indians to fight against the common enemy. During the struggle of freedom movement, it has generated in every Indian, every individual, the feeling of fighting against a common enemy, but along with that, it also made us to reach a common consensus. What is consensus? Consensus is coming to a common agreement on anything, coming to agreeing someone's opinion with acceptance. How do we agree with others' opinion? Because of the Britishers' rule, we learned many things. For example, the Britishers have given the right to vote only to 1% of the Indians, which means that there is a clear discrimination on the basis of this. There is no universal adult franchise, which means we learned that this kind of discrimination results in the untrue representation of the people's leaders. It will not give any chance to get the exact representation of the people's leaders or people's representatives. When there is no true representation, there is no possibility to get a good laws which are related to people's problems. So the people's problems will go unheard. So this we experienced during the British rule. So almost all the leaders of that moment as well as the people agreed that there should be equality, especially right to vote. When we are voting, we should give chance for every individual irrespective of their color, caste, creed, race, sex, religion or any aspect. We should inculcate the habit of being responsible citizen by making them right to vote, so that the true representation of the people will be happened by elections. So we learn like this many things by under the British rule, which forced all the Indians to fight against the Britishers as well as to come to a common conclusion that we need to have this kind of rules. We should not have that kind of rules. Which we should not have means we should not have the rules which are discriminating the Indians with the other Indians, which happened during the British rule. So this Britishers one way have enlightened all the Indians to be what they have to be, and they also showed what should not happen or what they should not face by following certain discriminatory policies. That is the first one when it comes to consensus. And the freedom movement, yes, today in India we have 29 states and 7 union territories. India is a very wide range of land where we have nearly 32 lakh square kilometers of area, which means it's very wide all along the east to west and the north to south. So it was not an easy task to combine all the people and make them to fight against a common enemy. So the leaders who are inspiring the people all over the India, it has become a very difficult task to make all of them to agree on the common lines. But the freedom struggle, day by day, it became stronger, and it inculcated in the people the feeling of nationalism, the spirit of nationalism. Nation means not land and its boundaries. Nation means nothing but the people who share a common value, who share common land boundaries. So the people, those who are living in that nation, are called the nationalists. So the spirit of nationalism got imbibed in them, got uplifted in them during the struggle for the freedom movement. And during this freedom movement only, as I mentioned earlier, the consensus concept, the common agreement, the common enemy concept forced the Indians to turn strongly against the Britishers, and this has not made us to fight against the foreign ruler, but it actually made us to regenerate our country's pride, our country's social status, and our country's knowledge to spread to the all corners of the world. Because because we are ruled by the Britishers, we were treated as a second rated people in our own country. But in actually, when we look into the history, Indians have given a lot to the world. The concept of zero was first started in India. The mathematics, the astronomers, the medicine, the knowledge of scientific approach, all these have their seeds in India. But as the foreigners have dominated the Indian rule, they started to treat Indians as the second rated people. So this also forced Indians not only to come to common consensus of fighting against a foreign ruler, but also regenerated the feeling of nationalism and also the true spirit of Indian nationalism to fight against the foreign ruler. So yes, now coming to the common and the fundamental question, are there no differences between the people, or did they subside their differences to write a constitution? What did they do? Yes, there are sharp differences in the opinions of how the government should be, or what should be the functioning of the government, but there was no difference on what type of government should India have in future after the Britishers' rule comes to an end. Almost all the parties, almost all the individuals preferred to have a democratic setup, not at all a monarchic setup or not at all any other setup. They want a setup in which the people's representatives will have the true power. It's not the individual holding the power, it is the people's representative holding the power. So that's why Indians have preferred to go for parliamentary democratic setup. Now coming to the other point, are there no differences? Yes, there are sharp differences on the way the law has to be drafted, on the way the policy has to be executed, but no one has disagreed on certain common principles of having equality, liberty, freedom of religion. So certain basic aspects are agreed by all and invited by all to be followed with equal respect and mutual concern. So there are sharp differences, but they never lifted up their voices against certain common basic ideas which they need, and they thought it is a need of the hour. And now we need to have this common understanding that we all belong to one nation and we all are people of one nation and have equality. We all are the citizens of the same nation. We all have rights in our own country, and we do not need to surrender ourselves to somebody or to forego our interest for one reason or the other reason. We are free to follow any religion. Like this, certain basic ideas all agreed and accepted. Now, as back as 1928 itself, the Motilal Nehru and 8 other leaders of the Congress drafted a constitution for the country of independent India. How the constitution of independent India should look alike, or what are the basic principles that has to be followed in an independent India. In a similar way, in the Karachi session which happened in 1931 also drafted a similar constitution where the basic ideas of an independent India was drafted for the first time. So this too gives us an idea what are the basic principles that guided the Constitution of India. Let us have a look on them. First, the Constitution has the universal adult franchise as the underlining principle, freedom for every individual, equality in treatment, and minority rights have to be preserved. So, universal adult franchise, with our past experiences and the previous experiences, which had forced the Britishers to get only 1% of the voting rights to the people, which means it is just a microscopic representation of the Indian community. So they want the true representation, which is a gigantic representation of a large country. So the true representation happens only when you give the universal adult franchise to them, and every individual has to be given freedom of thought, religion, expression and faith. And this thought and religion, expression and faith should be implemented truly, and no government, either the state or the union governments which will be coming in future of an independent nation, should not force them to subside their freedom. And also equality in terms of society, socially, economically, politically, also to be given to all the individuals equally, irrespective of their caste, religion. And when it comes to minorities, when we take a country, we generally have an opinion that in India most of them are Hindus. Yes, true, most of them are Hindus. But we also have Muslims, Christians, Sikh, Parsis, Jains, Zoroastrians, Buddhists. These all people come under the minority groups. And in order to preserve their interest, we need to set up certain rights and certain special privileges for the minority groups, so that the majority would not force the minority to follow the rules which are prescribed by the majority community. So these all are the basic foundation pillars for the drafting of the Indian Constitution. These all were drafted far earlier, before the Constituent Assembly, which actually sat up to write a constitution for an independent India. So the underlying principles or the foundation pillars of the Indian Constitution were laid way back before the Constituent Assembly has taken the charge of drafting a constitution to an independent India. The making of the Indian Constitution has not been an easy task, as it is mentioned earlier. Now, when we look at the institutional design of India, the institutions, when we talk about the institutions, there are certain systems that are in place now in the present day. But the Britishers have taught for us certain institutions and how they have to be put in place. Actually, their intention was not to teach us anything. They brought everything to do benefit for themselves. In this process of getting benefit from the system and changing the turn face of the system towards their side, they actually instituted certain institutions in place. Like for example, the provincial legislature was set up in 1937, and the elections were conducted with giving just only for 1% of Indians the right to vote chances. So the provincial legislatures were set up in India, and which many of the Indians also got a chance to observe that one, and some also got a chance to be a part of that, some got elected for that, and finally most of the Indians gained the actual experience and knowledge of how a provincial legislature works. Today we have 29 states, 29 legislative assembly halls are present, which got its foundations or which got its seeds laid down by the British provincial legislatures. And after being familiar with the system of the Britishers, Indians decided to go ahead by doing certain changes which are required for our country's requirements. They never ever imitated anything which is happening in the abroad or which is happening with them before. They followed, they observed, and later they checked once and twice whether this will be suitable and is it adaptable for our situations or not. These all were checked thoroughly by the leaders of that time, and that's the reason why today we have many laws which are the colonial laws being brought into the Indian Constitution from the Government of India Act 1935. This is actually passed by the British India, and this comes under the part of colonial laws. Now moving ahead, it took many years for us to gain independence, or we fought many years to attain independence. In this long deliberation process, Indian leaders got connected to many other countries' leaders, and we were carefully observing and watching what is happening in the world around us. If you have an idea of French Revolution, the French Revolution's guiding philosophy of the principles, liberty, equality and fraternity, inspired many of the people even in India also. The people, those who got inspired, were some of the members of the Constituent Assembly who brought the right to equality law in the Indian basic laws or the fundamental laws, which shows a clear reflection of the French Revolution on the Indian Constitution, which means it's not a book of just written by somebody who are not aware of the situations. The leaders who are watching the world around carefully observed the world changing trends and later they adopted them and made suitable changes for our requirements and modified it according to our necessity. And later, if they observed carefully the parliamentary system, before in India the Britishers declared independence, the bill has to be passed in the British Parliament. It has gone continuous deliberations there. There was a serious debate happened on this one. So the Indians are watching the British Parliament, reading the newspapers and observing the changes and how the bill got drafted and how it became an act, and finally when this was passed in and how did they give the independence to India. The parliamentary structure and the setup of the Britishers was very much inspiring for the Indians, because though there is a monarch for a namesake, it is a constitutional monarchy. The true power rests with the parliament. So the parliament system is nothing but the power of the people. The people's representatives stay in the parliament and dictate the rules and regulations for the entire country, who are nothing but the people are ruling their own country. No hereditary ruler is ruling them. So that idea also inspired Indians. So we do not have any hereditary ruler. We have a parliamentary setup in our country today. And moving on to the Bill of Rights of the United States. Today we have a set of fundamental rights, which are the basic rights which any government or any constitution cannot alter them. Any amendment cannot change the fundamental laws, because they are the basic structure of the constitution. Supreme Court in its judgment recently upheld that the basic structure of the constitution cannot be modified or changed or amended by any constitution with any sort of majority, which means the foundation pillars of the constitution are laid by observing everything which are best suitable of that point of time and which can be very suitable and necessity for our Indian constitution also were taken from various other constitutions and experienced people of the provincial legislature also, and watching the British parliamentary system, Bill of Rights which made America a special country. These all were the guiding principles for the drafting of the Indian Constitution. Now, who actually drafted the Indian Constitution? The Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly was formed in July 1946, and for the first meeting, it held its meeting in December 1946. What is this Constituent Assembly? Constituent Assembly is set up with a purpose to draft a constitution to an independent India. The Britishers have passed the Indian Independence Act in the British Parliament, and by the time it gets the approval and becomes an act, they have intimated the Indians to draft their own constitution, because very soon they are going to grant freedom for our country. So with the news of that, a Constituent Assembly was elected, not on the universal adult franchise principle, but at the limited voting itself. An interim Constituent Assembly was elected, and after the Constituent Assembly was elected, in that we have nearly 300 odd members. After the partition of India and Pakistan, the Muslim leaders went towards Pakistan's Constituent Assembly. So only 299 members were the members of the Constituent Assembly at that time. Dr. Rajendra Prasad was the president of the Constituent Assembly, while Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee. So with under the able leadership of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the Indians, especially the Constituent Assembly leaders, have taken up the great mammoth task of drafting a constitution to an independent India. It took nearly 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to draft the entire constitution and finally to get into place. It's on 26th of November 1949, the Parliament has agreed and given a constitution to itself by Indians, to the Indians itself for the future generations, and to mark as an anniversary of this one, we adopted it on 26th November 1949, but it will come into force from 26th Jan 1950. So on 26th Jan, that's why we celebrate the Republic Day as a mark of anniversary of the day when the Constitution came into effect. And this is a brief introduction of the drafting of the Indian Constitution. What actually means the drafting of the Indian Constitution? Is it truly acceptable that the leaders of a microscopic community of India have drafted a constitution to our nation of a 100 odd crore people? So maybe at that time we have 60 to 70 crore population. So how can it be accepted today, and what is it in comparison with the other countries? How did Dr. B.R. Ambedkar manage and answer the questions, and how is it even today considered as a living document or a live document? Let's find out. Now, we all get a fundamental question. The constitution which has been drafted 50 years ago from date or 60 years ago from date, how can it be accepted today? The acceptance of the constitution itself is really a tough question. General point of discussion. We are in 2015. We all are born up with the new ideas and new thoughts, thinking and everything. The framers of the constitution were young in 1950, which means we are not aware of the society which actually was at that time. We do not know actually the meaning of the colonial system actually. We never faced any colonial problems. We are born in independent India. So for you, a law which is stating or explaining about equality is just a law which is explaining what is the meaning of the word equality. But the people, those who suffered the colonial problems, those who faced the colonial atrocities, they knew the true meaning of what is equality. They feel it really free when they heard the word equality. So there is a lot of difference in understanding every word of the constitution by the people of the old generations and the present day generations. So there is a fundamental point that why should I accept a constitution which has been drafted very early or around some 65 years ago. Now the answer comes to this is the acceptance of the constitution was never been questioned by any social group or any political party in our country. When we look at the world around, we have seen the countries like Belgium, the countries like USSR, where the basic provisions of the constitution are being questioned. The legitimacy of the constitution has been questioned. Many constitutions are being rewritten, redrafted, because they were not suitable, and many of the social and the political organizations did not agree on certain ideas and the ideologies. In India, the situation was different. Why? What gave the chance to have so diverse and different thoughts in the making of the Indian constitution that it satisfies and justifies any question which has been raised by the social groups or the political groups? The answer is very clear. When the constitution was being drafted, the Constituent Assembly had many social groups. The social groups in the sense, when we look at the provisions which are present in the constitution, before they became the provisions in the constitution, they are being a part and parcel of the debates of the Constituent Assembly. When we talk about the Constituent Assembly, we also get certain doubts. Yes, Constituent Assembly for a 30 to 40 years span, even after India got its independence, was dominated by the Congress party. So obviously the Constituent Assembly was also dominated by the Congress party. So we all may get a doubt. The 1% of voting only is given to the provincial legislature elections. So the Constituent Assembly was also elected on the similar lines. So how can you justify that there has been an equal representation or the geographical representation of all over India during that time? And how can the constitution which is written during that time can be justified today? The answer is very clear and straight. First point, the elections were conducted. The Constituent Assembly was dominated by the Congress members. It is 110% right. The Congress party itself is a true representation of the nation. We have seen it when it fought for the Indian national movement. We have leaders who have diverse opinions in the Congress party itself, who have sharp differences in the thoughts, in the ideas. So it is not that the Congress has a similar policy or a unique strategy where all members have followed the same guidelines or accepted the same ideology what the head of the party says. We have different groups different policies, different ideas within the Congress, and the geographical representation has been come up with the provincial legislature who are also coming from different regions of that time. Even if you have universal adult franchise till date of that time, even that cannot justify of having a right constitution which we have today, because the diverse of opinions is a major advantage. When we have universal adult franchise, we have many representatives. When the many representatives are coming within the Congress and the other than Congress, you get opinions of people who are having diverse opinions, who are having different ideas on different topics or different subjects. So these all were discussed thoroughly in the Constituent Assembly of that time, and drafting a constitution was not an easy task. They have nearly 7 committees. All these 7 committees have members who thoroughly checked all the other constitutions which are available till date of that day, and then they always checked whether these constitution or these laws are suitable to our situations or not, whether we can implement them in our social context, because India is a very diverse country. They have taken the constitutional laws like fundamental rights from the Bill of Rights of the Britishers. Then we have taken the union and state relations from the Canadian Constitution. Then we have also taken the strong union from the Australian Constitution. We have taken the directive principles of state policy from the Irish Constitution, the parliamentary setup from the British Constitution. These all, after considering all these things, they have drafted a plan which suits best to the Indians of their knowledge. After drafting a constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was head of the drafting committee, drafted the constitution, verified it thoroughly, and brought to the Constituent Assembly for discussion. He read clause by clause, word by word in the Constituent Assembly, explaining each word in detail to everyone, every member in the Constituent Assembly. It took nearly 114 days spread over in 3 years, and after having thorough discussion, every word, every clause, every provision, every sentence has been discussed thoroughly, deliberately in the Constituent Assembly. Many of them have raised their doubts on this, on every word, every section, every debate. They have all the records of the debates, and nearly 2000 amendments are being changed or made after the doubts are been clarified, and finally we got the constitution in place. It took nearly 2 years, exactly 2 years, 11 months, 18 days to draft a constitution to our country, which is the lengthiest written constitution in the world till date. This lengthiness is nothing but actually it explains every word and every clause in detail. What would be the action taken by the government if this kind of act has been performed by a citizen or an individual? What should be the action taken by the state government? What should be the action taken by the government of the union level? What should a citizen do? What a citizen should not do? What are his rights? What are his duties? What are his other things which he should not perform? Everything has been explained detailedly in the constitution. And after drafting the constitution, once again they have read it, and everybody has been satisfied till that date, and they have fixed the basic structure of the constitution by that time itself, and made sure that every word and everything has been recorded. And when they printed this, we got 12 bulky volumes of the Indian Constitutional Assembly recordings in making of the Indian Constitution, which is used to interpret the understanding of the Constitution for many years. Because even we are new to have a Constitution. We never had a Constitution earlier to this or prior to this. We are also entering into a phase where we have dictated rules and regulations which we all have to follow. These all things made India a special country, a unique country. And today, Indian Constitution is a role model for many other countries. Indian Constitution is being a guiding principle, a guiding book for many other countries which are newly becoming independent in the present century. We shall now find out the guiding principles or the values of the Indian Constitution. When we talk about the guiding values, what were the basic ideas on which the Indian Constitution framers have walked, or what laid the path for the making of the Constitution? Before going into understanding what is philosophy, in philosophy what do we deal? What is the underlying concept of our Constitution? We can understand the philosophy of our Constitution in two different views. One, by looking at the views of the major leaders. The other, by looking at the preamble of the Constitution. The preamble of the Constitution, which states, "We the people of India," declares that we are sovereign, secular, democratic, republican country, will give the details for us that what is imbibed in the Constitution. Before that, what are the major views of the political leaders of the Constituent Assembly of that time, also gives a light or throws light on the philosophy of the Constitution. But before going into understanding both the views or the thoughts of the political leaders of the Constituent Assembly members or the preamble of the Constitution, we should first recognize that there is one name missing, the name which has made magic on the people of India, which made thousands of people to walk along with the name. That name is none other than Mahatma Gandhi. So you never find in the list of the members of the Constituent Assembly Mahatma Gandhi's name. But the promise and the dreams what he mentioned earlier were inspiring many leaders who were actually the members of the Constituent Assembly. So through them, he has already inculcated the feelings or the ideas what he want the country to be. Gandhiji, in his magazine of Young India in 1931, gave a clear picture what he want the Constitution of India to be like. He clearly mentioned that I want a Constitution of India where the poorest shall feel that it is his country and there shall not be any discrimination of higher class or lower class. He want the poor to feel happy for his country. He want no discriminations basing on the richness of higher class or poor class, high class or low class. And he also want the poor to have an equal voice in determining or shaping the future of the country or electing the people of the nation. He also want all communities of people to live in complete harmony. This all has not come just from a poetical thoughts of Gandhiji, but he has looked into the deep and deeper side of Indians. He has observed the Indian soil very firmly. He had experienced the class status. He has seen the conditions of the poor suffering very severely and not at all meeting at all, or there is no importance for the poor man's life, that he has seen with his true experiences. And he also made that the poor should have an equal voice with equal to the others, high class or the educated class, whoever it is. And he also has a better experience when India and Pakistan are being partitioned. So he want to have all the communities who are living in India should live in complete harmony and peaceful life, and they all should have that brotherhood feeling. And he also want the society to be free from dangerous and intoxicating drugs for the children, for the youth, and also drinks which spoil the physical and the mental ability of the children as well as the youth. And he also want to have equal status for women equally with that of men. So there should not be any discrimination of men and women. Even today, after 60 years, Indians could not attain this one completely. Yes, there are laws in place, but truly, if we keep our hands at our heart and ask a question, do we really do not discriminate between a boy and a girl child? Still, it's an unanswerable question. It's a fact we cannot accept. We make joy or parties when we have a boy child. I don't say that we mourn or be sorrowful when we have a girl child, not in all the families, but still the acceptance of a girl child as that of a boy child is still not in equal. There is inequality still in existence. But Gandhiji expressed his views more than 80 years before from today's date, that he want the society to be like this. He want no classes. He want the poor to claim that they are Indians. He want the poor to raise their voices. He want them to participate actively in shaping the future of the country. He want equal respect for all of them. He want perfect harmony in all the communities living together with mutual respect and concern. He do not want any of the young children or the aged people, adults, to get affected with the intoxicating drugs or drinks, and he do not want indiscrimination, or he do not want any discrimination for women. He want equal respect for women with par with men. This is a broad ideology of Gandhiji. That is the reason why he is rightly known as Mahatma Gandhiji. The guiding values of the Indian Constitution, we have discussed the views of Gandhiji. Now, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who actually faced or experienced the inequality in the Indian society under the British rule while the freedom struggle, also had a vision that we should have a country where there is true equality. So he was having a different view when it comes to Gandhiji's thought process. So he expressed his views also in the Constituent Assembly on that day, saying that we have equality politically, but still we will have inequality socially and economically. We continue to have one person, one value, one vote, but still we deny to give the social and the political equality of one person, one value. If we continue to do this and we live with these contradictions, it is nothing but the democracy would peril. These are the words which are exactly used by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to express his views in the Constituent Assembly on 26th of November 1949. So from this date, we come to understand that B.R. Ambedkar also had views similarly to have equality in our country parallelly with Gandhiji, but had a different view or different thought process when he is not accepting the idea of Gandhiji's equality, but he had a different idea of how to eradicate inequality in our country. And moving ahead to understand the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, who proclaimed that 15th of August 1947, with the midnight stroke, India enters into a new dawn, a freedom country, a free country. We are no more subjects to a foreign ruler. We are citizens of an independent nation. So with this, we enter into a new phase, and with this new phase, we have drafted a new constitution for us. So, what are the guiding principles of our Indian Constitution? We have seen the philosophy, one side of the coin, getting the views of the famous leaders or the major leaders of the Constituent Assembly, and the other side, we have the preamble of the Constitution. What is a preamble? A preamble is a short statement which actually gives for us a list of the views or the values which are present in a very large document in detail. So it's a short statement or a summary of the entire Constitution. And this preamble idea has been taken from the US Constitution, where all the countries which attained independence in the 20th century are inspired from the US Constitution, and they have taken up from the US Constitution the idea of preamble. So the preamble of the Indian Constitution has given a clear idea of what a constitution is. It has set a standard or a summary of the Constitution. It gives us the values and a broad picture of how the Constitution takes on. It just looks like a poem of a Constitution. So let's now find out the details or understand what is the preamble of the Indian Constitution. The preamble, as I mentioned earlier, it's a short statement. Let us now see what is the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialistic, secular, democratic, republican country which is having an ideology of equality in thought, belief and faith. Democratic republic, repeat, to secure to all its citizens and the justice, social, economical and political liberty of thought, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among all of them the fraternity of equality, promote among them all fraternity in the preservance of dignity of the individual and also to preserve the dignity of the unity and integrity of the nation and to secure to all its citizens mutual respect. So, we the people of India, having solemnly resolving to constitute India to be a socialist, sovereign, secular, democratic, republican country and also to secure to all its citizens justice of political, economical and social, and then moving on to equality, opportunities, faith and worship, and we have the fraternity feeling among all of them to preserve the unity of the individuals and unity of the country and the individual respect and also the unity of the nation. We have all these principles are the guiding principles or the basic principles of our Indian constitution, wherein we are guiding or the entire constitution has been drafted. We can consider this as the seeds of the Indian constitution. From here you can understand the broad framework of the Indian constitution. We shall now discuss in detail each word of the preamble. We shall now look into the understanding of each important word mentioned in the preamble. I have just dotted down all the important words. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 important words in our preamble. Let us see one by one in detail. We the people. Here when we mentioned about we the people, you may get a doubt. In the Constituent Assembly, all the people are not the members. The people's representatives have drafted the constitution. So, though they are not true representation, but they had people of different opinions coming to common consensus, raising their doubts, discussing on either sides of the points and then coming to a conclusion. So, it was not given as a gift by any country or not forced by any king to accept this one. It is given by the people's representative to the people. So, we the people of India are giving a constitution to ourselves, not by somebody else or not by a monarch or not by a king giving to somebody. Sovereign. We will not accept any of the external pressures in taking a decision for our country's benefit internally or in the international affairs. So, internal or external matters, we are independent and we will not take any pressure or we would not accept any other country to interfere in making policy decisions in our country. So, India is a sovereign country and socialistic. The wealth will not be concentrated only in the few hands. It will be rotating from one corner to the other corner and mainly regulated by the government. So, no few people will hold the wealth in their hands and be as a neo-rich families in the society. That is for the socialistic. Secular. When it comes to secular, we had a bitterful experiences when India and Pakistan were partitioned. So, there would not be any official religion of a state and all religions will have equal respect. And moving on to understand democratic. In India, we have democratic setup where periodical elections will happen. People will have universal adult franchise, the right to vote, irrespective of their caste, color, creed, and they get their free hand to elect their representatives. So, that's how the true democracy is set up in our country. Republic. We do not have any hereditary ruler like a king, his son or somebody else taking all the powers. It is the people's representatives who elect the president of our country, who is the head of the nation. So people's representatives are elected through universal adult franchise, who are again not hereditary basis. So we do not have any hereditary ruler. So we have an elected people's representative. So we can proudly say that India is a republican country, and we also have a written constitution which guides and rules and everything are dictated for every individual. The procedure how the election should happen, how the people should contest, how the election procedure should go on, and how the results should be declared, how the president should be elected, everything is in place. So we have true republican setup, and justice cannot be denied on the grounds of social inequality, rich or the poor. Justice acts similarly to both the parties. Liberty, there should not be any unreasonable restrictions mentioned or put on the rights of the individuals. And moving on to equality, there is equal respect as per the law. There is no discrimination, and they want to end up all the traditional social inequality by bringing equality into place. And lastly but not the least, fraternity, the brotherlyhood relationship. We all have to remember that we all share the same land and we all belong to one family, and we should respect each other mutually so that a country with different communities can live harmoniously. So this is the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Now, till now we have discussed about the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Now moving on to the institutional design. Our Indian Constitution is a very lengthy constitution in which the details of everything has been mentioned. The institutional arrangements are mentioned in a very detailed manner. What is an institutional arrangement? An institutional arrangement is setting a procedure for everything. The way you have to register yourself for a voter ID card, you need to approach to a post office, enroll your details in that as per the requirement of the election commission. The election commission would verify the record, and then it would issue a voter ID card for you, which is valid for you to cast your vote during the voting time. So like from a very minute thing of registering yourself to an election vote to a very large incident like from where you run for an election to a prime ministerial candidate, and then you govern the country. Here, when we talk about the constitution, as I already mentioned, this constitution has been written 60 to 65 years ago. So as it is a very detailed and lengthy book, or lengthy in context, the constitution framers always wanted the constitution to have its life with it. When a constitution will have the life, when it is updated regularly and it is according to the aspirations of the people and getting modified according to the changes which are happening in the society. So it should meet the aspirations and it should accommodate the changes which are changes happening in the society. So when these changes are brought in place in the constitution, then only the constitution can live and survive for the next generation. Otherwise it becomes an outdated document and people started to question at the legitimacy of the constitution. So in order to avoid these kind of situations, the constitution framers has given a chance or brought an institution placement there, that is amendments. Any changes which are happening in the society should be incorporated into the constitution, and till now there are so many amendments made to the constitution. The changing of the words or the sentences or modifying the laws which are mentioned in the constitution is known as constitutional amendments. Till date, Indian constitution has been amended for nearly 110 times, which means that constitution is being upgraded for every changes which are happening in the society in order to meet the requirements or to satisfy the aspirations of the people of the society of that time. We have a small example. When a constitution is not updated, like in Russia, in USSR, when the constitution came into force in 1920-22, wherein they brought the socialistic system into place, where they brought the communism into rule, or communist party has taken over the power, they could not give any freedom, they could not adopt any changes for their framework of constitution, which forced them, the people, to fight against the existing rule, and resulting in breaking up of the Union of Soviet Socialistic Republics. They broke down into nearly 17 countries today, which were actually termed as one association once, were now termed into 17 different countries, where the constitution could not hold them much longer, because the constitution is an outdated document for them. Today, in many countries, the constitutions are just a mere paper documents. There, nobody values much for the constitution. But in India, the situation is different. Any doubt you have, you can refer the constitution. Every law, every procedure is mentioned in detail. For example, if you want to run for an election to the highest post in India, like Prime Minister or President, there are prescribed qualifications for you. There is a prescribed procedure for you. How to contest, how you have to file a nomination, what are the required documents for that, and how can you approach the people, what you should do, what you should not do. If you are elected, when will be your appointment date, who will make you to take the oath of office, and afterwards how many days will you be in office. If any conditions will change, if any situations of internal emergency occurs, how would you deal with the situation, what should be implemented at that time, how your powers will come, how the rights of the individuals will be there, what a government can do, what a government's basic duty is, what are the rights of the individuals, how a government has to protect the rights of the individuals in every situation, and how the rights of the individuals should not be affected by the policies which are made by the government. These all are mentioned in detail in the Indian Constitution, and the rights of the individuals are given a special place where the government cannot disturb them in any condition, and it is a responsibility of the government to uphold the rights of the citizens and ensure that the rights of the citizens are not disturbed by any other social evils or societal problems. These all are mentioned in detail. That is the reason why Indian Constitution is the lengthiest written constitution in the world. Now, in this constitutional design unit, we have discussed what are the guiding principles of the Indian Constitution. Though Gandhiji was not a member of the Constituent Assembly, how the ideas and the dreams of Gandhiji were incorporated in the basic ideas of the Constitution, in the drafting of the Constitution, how Dr. B.R. Ambedkar expressed his different views, how the different consensus have come to a common approach and common understanding, and how many amendments were made before Indian Constitution, the draft Constitution, was brought into actual place, and how many years it took to draft a Constitution, how we have taken the Bill of Rights inspiration from the US Constitution, the British parliamentary structure for the Indian parliamentary structure's base, the Canadian Constitution, the Austrian Constitution, the Irish Constitution. These all constitutions we have referred, and we have checked once, twice and thrice, and checked again and again whether these laws are suitable to the Indian context or not. If necessary, they modified the laws and readjusted them to the Indian soil requirement, and finally we got the greatest constitution in the world, which is living long living from the past 60 years without any fluctuations, and it is a living document which is a guiding principle, which is a encyclopedia of all the procedures and the formats, what we have, what we should follow, what should be done, what should not be done. Everything is given in detail in our Indian Constitution. That's all we have in this lesson.